Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo. I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live episode. I'm thrilled to be joined by none other than Tim, aka Cranjis McBaksetball of the Lakers Exceptionalism pod and BBall Index. Tim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Not so hot after that OKC game, but we're back at it. Some highs, some lows. Excited to vent a little bit on this one, and no place better to do it than here.
Let's get into it. So the sky is falling in Lakerland for some, coming off of this 121-92 loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder. That was not as close as the final score indicated. Lakers were down 70-38 at halftime and 100-64 through three quarters. So what was your biggest takeaway from last night's loss? I rewatched the first half. That's about as far as I could go. And I cannot go through the third quarter. But what was your biggest takeaway looking back at last night?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch it live. I had an early morning, so I didn't, I think, experience the mental and like emotional toll that you and everyone else did. But I did rewatch the whole game. And certainly what stood out to me was just, I left that game thinking the distance between LA and the top of the West it's there. It's large, and the jarring lack of effectiveness from the offense was weird. It was different. And so like when I'm seeing the offense play, I'm tracking a whole bunch of things. I'm very methodical. I am, never getting too high, never getting too low. There will be games where we score a ton of points and probably shouldn't, but got a little lucky. There will be other games we don't score many points, but it's because the shot making was poor. This was a game where no matter what the team was doing, good process, bad process, nothing seemed to work. The process itself was kind of questionable. It got a little bit better too late in the game, but certainly from the jump, it was not strong. But the shot making was the worst we'd seen all year. But even if you adjust for that, even if you say, hey, LA has a normal shooting game, they still would have gotten blown out. And to me, that's very concerning. This was a game where like they weren't very structured. When they were pretty good about attacking coverages, but it was bizarre, man. And the team was a full 10 expected offensive rating points below what I would have forecasted based on those KPIs and scheme I look at, which is about the worst I've seen in the 100 games I've looked at between last season and this season. Usually I can tell you, their possession quality is going to be about this much based on how structured they are, how well they counter help, how well they attack coverages, stuff like that. But in this one, the disruption, the length, the speed of Oklahoma City really stood out, and them being able to fly around, really stretch and compress their defensive shell very easily, overplay things, ball pressure, off ball pressure, switch only really when they want to, and then hold their own without having to use all these extra tactics. Like, it is so far removed from where the Lakers are. Still lots of season left. But as as an X's and O's guy, I'm trying to think of like, what would you need to do? How many different layers of scheme do you need to add to this Lakers team to equal what OKC could do? And it's a lot. And I still don't know if they can quite reach that point. So I'm concerned. I think there are personnel, limitations that you can't quite cover up. And we got to see that against the best team in the league last night.
What are some of those things that you think they have to do better moving forward in this matchup in particular?
I think you've got to be more focused offensively. Like, I think there will be games where maybe you lose focus. It's a really bottom of the barrel like team in the league, and you go out there, you just roll the ball out, you expect to win. And it's hard to avoid that for how long the season is, how often you're playing games, how quickly you have to prepare for the games. But for a game like this is the one that we've been circling to say, like, this is the litmus test for where this team stands. And I expect the team to bring it, to prepare, with a championship mentality, to come out and be very focused, very sharp with their attacking. And instead, we saw a team just kind of like dilly-dallying, not be structured. They were on the season, not very good organized offensive rate, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But in this game, it wasn't great. Attacking coverages was fine. They weren't countering any sort of help. They weren't really taking what the defense was giving them. And I expect the Lakers defense to struggle in matchups like this. And you really need to lean on your offense to be able to carry the day and pull this kind of upset. And the Lakers just did not bring it from my perspective, from an execution standpoint. It certainly wasn't there from a shot making standpoint, and that happens. It's unfortunate it happened in this game, but even if it didn't, there's a pretty large gap to me, and its process, its execution, its personnel, and they were just kind of outclassed in this one in a lot of different ways.
I forget if it was in the first or second quarter, but there was one possession that JJ alluded to after the game where I believe it was coming out of a timeout, or certainly a dead ball situation, but I believe it was a timeout. And 3 of the players were in zone and 2 players were in man, and OKC got a wide open dunk. I think it was Chet. And it was like, I mean, you're not going to beat this team if you don't even know what type of coverage you're in defensively. And there was just far too many situations like that. I also think a continued problem for me is that, like, watching the Vando minutes when they tried to put him on Shea, it was just immediately have someone else come screen for Shea, draw the switch, and then go attack that player off the dribble. And I think that continues to be, in my opinion, an issue with the Lakers defense, is with how passive they are with their switching. It's just like it negates some of the advantages that they theoretically have, having a Vando out there, having a Marcus Smart out there, because the defense is just, okay, where's Jake LaRavia, or where's Rui Hachimura, where's Luka? And then they're going to have that player come screen, draw the switch, and then go to work. So I thought we saw that too a lot, where it would have been nice to see. I mean, we saw this in the Minnesota series going back to last season as well, where they would just have, if Vando or DFS or whoever was on Ant, they would have that player switched off. But I think that continues to be kind of a thing in these types of matchups, where I get that the Lakers are, JJ's talked about it before, like trying to draw teams into isolation situations where they're going to overly index on mismatch hunting and getting out of the flow of their offense. But I do think there are certain players where they can thrive in that situation. I think Shea is one of them, and he just cooked them in isolation last night, to say nothing of obviously the breakdowns all over the floor in the half court and in transition. But I think that's another area they got to figure out, because I don't like, it's one thing if I've talked about this, and I believe we've talked about this before, like JJ and his ideal roster build or play style is that 2024 Celtics of switch everything 1 through 5 and have 5 lasers out there. The Lakers are not that team on either side of the ball, and the switch everything, to me, it just, like, I think we've seen a limitation to that. And I do think this might have to be, this might be a group that has to be a little bit more conservative with their switching compared to just switching across the board and letting opponents dictate the matchups.
Yeah, this is a team that is very switch heavy. They're also very drop heavy. And in a 1-5 ball screen, when you've got a real point of attack guy out there that can navigate ball screens, that's fine, right? You've got some drop bigs. You've got guys like Gabe Vincent, Marcus Smart, who can navigate screens. That can be fine. Gabe Vincent has only played 3 games this year, so he's not helping. But when you, to your point, if it isn't a 1-5 ball screen, you go pull in the 3 or the 2 or the 4. Now you're choosing as the defense between, like, I'm not going to play drop coverage with Luka Doncic. Either I'm switching or I am showing and recovering. And they've been switching. I get it. And the idea there being, we'd rather switch, keep you in front, and then shrink the court, compress our shell, and then make you try to shoot over it, or, screen and cut and run help beaters, versus giving up that immediate 4v3 with the short roll pass going to a guard or a wing. So I understand, but to your point, it's tough, man. It's hard to watch that and be so passive as a defense and watch the offense decide exactly what they want to do when they want to do it. I will say, if anyone's looking for a glimmer of hope, this was not quite the representative game when it came to OKC's shooting. Like, this was the second longest average 2-point attempt distance that they have had on the season in this game. When they were taking 2s, they were from further out. And it was also, for the Lakers, the second furthest distance on 2-pointers they've conceded in any game. So for either team, the OKC offense was being pushed out more than normal. However, they shot 7 for 11 on their long middies. Just shooting over those mismatches was their 3rd best percentage on the year. And it felt easy. It felt automatic. I think if you were to, point that out to JJ, he'd say that is the defense working, and they got lucky. We'll do better next time. So to a degree, I think you can live with that, but it's when you have the kind of breakdowns like you brought up earlier, where you're still giving up dunks and you're giving up layups because the defense isn't on the same page when you're trying to engage in those extra, tactical layers to try to support these weaker on-ball defenders. That's really what would frustrate me as a coach, and what I certainly see JJ getting really pissed off about. And he's not afraid to show it. So it's easy to tell, even before the ball goes through the hoop, did we execute the way we wanted to? And way too often the answer has been no.
I mean, they had easily 3 or 4 lobs / like rolling dunks off of empty side pick and roll actions that just the Lakers' help defense was non-existent. It was just it was something, it was a sight to behold. But I want to kind of take a step back and zoom out with the bigger picture here of I was a bit concerned going into this game because of the way the Lakers have been playing recently, specifically on this road trip. And they lay an absolute egg in Atlanta, and they're playing this shorthanded Atlanta team. They get ran off the floor to the point that JJ's pulling the starters midway through the third. Then they have, I was hoping for a more bounce back performance against Charlotte. I thought it was a pretty disappointing first half. They had an incredible third quarter, which ultimately was the difference in that game. And then we're kind of playing prevent basketball in the fourth to just maintain the lead. But they're 1-2 in their last 3 games, 1-2 on this trip. And I think they've been largely underwhelming over this stretch. And one of the through lines, in my opinion, has been their struggles with more athletic teams. And looking at Atlanta and Charlotte and OKC, I think all 3 teams have distinct athleticism and speed advantages over this group, and they've struggled on both ends. They've struggled to maintain ball pressure and corral ball handlers and prevent getting in the blender. And then also offensively, they've struggled to create that separation, get downhill, and puncture the defense. So looking at this recent stretch here coming off of the really impressive win against the Spurs, what have been your takeaways from this overall road trip? And what do you feel like we've learned about this group that maybe was being a little bit masked from the start up to that point?
Sure. So one thing where the mask kind of came off is LA was getting away with some kind of BS Mickey Mouse mid-range shooting earlier this year. We were, the rim frequency wasn't great, but it seemed like the team was just automatic on short mid-range jumpers, those floaters, their long middies. In the tracking that I do, just looking at the half-court offense, they were scoring 8.5 points per game above expectations on mid-range shooting prior to the stretch, and that has fallen back down to 1.7 points per game these 3 games. So that's what is that? That's 7 points right there per game difference just from your mid-range shooting, with how you went from hitting everything to a bit more normal. From 3, we have also seen a 5 point per game differential. A couple games ago, I think it kind of times out really well with this 3 game versus before the 3 game stretch. I looked at how does the offensive infrastructure, shot making, efficiency, possession quality, all those different things. How does it compare now versus a year ago? And just about everything was worse except for that shot making. LA was shooting over their heads. Their guy, we had, I think it was 4 players in the top 12 in the entire league in mid-range shot making efficiency. That's their difficulty adjusted shooting proficiency. And some of these guys are really good shooters, but they were all concurrently having career highs, and that just wasn't going to continue. So there was some really hot shooting earlier. It's kind of fallen back down to earth. Austin Reaves is, this trickles down to individual players, and he's been one of those guys where it went from holy crap, this guy, give him all the money in the world, to a little bit more reserved the past few games. But that is one thing that stood out to me. The backline defense is another thing that stood out to me as a major issue. There's so much vulnerability boxing out, even when other teams aren't actually getting the ball to bounce in the right direction, where they get the ball, or maybe it goes through the net, and so there's no need for a rebound. We are seeing way too many guys, whether it's the guards, the wings, the bigs, not boxing out, and their players able to crash and be in really good position. So there's a huge vulnerability there. It's glaring on the film. You've got guys like Vando and Rui who are wings masquerading as bigs that don't box out nearly as much as they need to, and the guards don't do a great job with it either. Rotationally, I don't think the team is where it needs to be, and I think they've purposefully picked drop coverage and switching as 2 defenses that don't require you to rotate quite as much. But when they do need to rotate because there's an on-ball breakdown or something like that, it's not been on time. It's not been disruptive. I think Rui's been kind of the face of that. He is guarding up a lot more this year. He's guarding fours more than threes for the first time as a Laker. And we are seeing the rebounding from him stink. We are seeing the rotational defense stink. We are seeing the rim protection stink. And he looks out of place, and he kind of is out of place and in a different role than he was a season ago. And I think that speaks to just kind of a lack of those secondary rim protectors, that back line. If your big man's pulled out onto the perimeter, what else do you have? And this team has a whole lot of guys that, they've got quick hands, but they're not very good at protecting the rim. And that has stood out to me as well. I think the other thing is looking at the Lakers offense and their rim frequency, 21st in the league. It is a style of play with these further out shots that's going to lead to more game-to-game variance in their shooting percentage. So I'm trying not to live and die with, we shot well today, we shot poorly today, but that is something I would tell folks to keep an eye out for the rest of the season.
You mentioned Rui, and I think Rui and Ayton have been a couple guys who, when the Lakers defense has really been at its low points this season. I feel like those have been, you mentioned Rui kind of being the poster boy. I think it's been like those two and their backline rotations and the processing and decision making. And one of the early, it's very early, so I want to apply that caveat, but in 269 minutes together, per Data Baller, which is pulling the lineup data from Wowie, Lakers have a 124.2 defensive rating with DeAndre Ayton and Rui Hachimura on the floor together, which is abysmal. And overall, they have a -10 net rating with those two on the floor together. So there's been this conversation about the fifth starter, and going back to the offseason, I've laid out my case as to why I think Marcus Smart made sense to be the fifth starter. And he's imperfect because he cannot make a wide open three to save his life right now. So that is its own concern that you have to factor in when thinking about how he potentially fits with the starting group. But with LeBron's return on the horizon, I do think the Lakers need to take a hard look at splitting up this Rui Ayton pairing and almost staggering them from a defensive perspective. And that, to me, would lend itself to Marcus replacing, or LeBron replacing Rui in the starting group, and Marcus technically replacing him from last year's group. But what have you made of that pairing in particular, and what have been your early impressions of their defensive struggles together? And LA's, they're not rebounding the ball as well with those two on the floor together. I think that the true shooting percentage is up because both guys are obviously plus offensive players, but between the rebounding, the defense, I think that pairing will be better with LeBron, but I still think there's a clear ceiling there that, to me, the one way to address that would be staggering them more and starting Marcus.
I think I'm with you in terms of when LeBron is back, have him in for Rui, start Smart. I think we were on the same page there preseason. Mm-hmm. I'm still there. I think that's the way you need to operate. That gives you that point of attack defender. It allows Luka to continue being a helper. LeBron's a helper. Austin's more of a chaser defensively. So to me, it makes sense. I think that is, for me, straightforward enough, and I hope to see it. I expect to see it. Who knows if we'll see it or not. But with that specific Rui-Ayton pairing, I don't know, man. On paper, it shouldn't be this bad. And I think part of the reason it has been this bad has been a little bit of poor luck. When we look at the 3-point percentage that those two guys have seen with a duo on the court together, opponents are shooting 42% on threes, and that's not something that any of them individually are able to really make that much of a difference for. When we do luck adjusted data at BBall Index, this is one of the primary things that we look at for, hey, what here is finicky shooting luck. When you look at at an individual layer, nothing advanced going on with, let's see here, Ayton on court, opponents are shooting 41% from three, and with Rui on the court, they are shooting 38%. With Ayton off the court, it's 30%, and with Rui off the court, it's 33%. Neither of those guys individually are worth a 8 percentage point difference in opposing 3-point percentage. That's going to correct itself over time. That is a big part of what is impacting this data. For me, I'm not seeing enough on film that tells me like this is dead on arrival. And this is one of those like causation versus correlation things that every year you will run into lineups or 2 or 3 or 4 man groupings where there's a little bit of luck on the good side or the bad side. And for me, the way I approach it is with samples this small, I don't care nearly as much. That's a big part of why we use like stabilized data at BBall Index. I don't have it for 2-man lineups yet. I'd love for us to get to there, but like if I can't, from a basketball sense, like explain it in a way that I think is legit rather than just kind of trying to rationalize. If I can't come up with a basketball explanation I can believe in for why I'm seeing what I'm seeing, I am a little bit more conservative and willing to say, hey, there's some shooting luck going on here. If Rui and Ayton can't work together, that is like truly a death nail for this team because those are 2 critical players in this rotation, even if you are fully healthy. So I'm hoping to see that data correct itself over time. Defensively, I know offensively, I forgot to mention, for this last 3-game stretch, these have been 2 of the team's 3 worst shot-making games on the season. And the Atlanta game was a really good example of that, where the process was good. They were getting really good looks. They just were not hitting anything. I know defensively there were issues, and Atlanta was shooting hot, but offensively, I came out of that game feeling just fine. I know a lot of others weren't, but that is the kind of like, within a game, within a week, you're going to have some weird variance, and I am not, I don't know, I'm holding my ground on Rui Ayton, while at the same time thinking when LeBron is back, I want him in that starting group, of course.
Yeah, no, to your point, I'm glad you made that counterpoint, and that's why I love having you on, like looking at, because you could adjust the defensive 3-point luck on Data Baller, and so I just adjusted it to 50%, and they kind of have like a little thing there that explains it of sort of so adjusting it to 50%, which is like 50% with the actual 3-point shooting versus league average 3-point shooting, that then brings that pairing down to a -6 net rating and a 120 defensive rating, which is still not good, but better. And then if you look at some of the other data here with like, I think what's interesting is that the 4-man combination of Ayton, Rui, Austin, and Luka, those 4 together, 144 defensive rating, and that's with the 50%. It gets much worse if you do, just the actual results. So point being, like, I think there's just a limitation to that starting group, and that's been partly why I've been advocating for Rui to come off the bench. And I do think that those guys, their processing and effort can wane a little bit. I think Ayton in particular has been pretty disappointing on this road trip. I thought he just looking at some numbers with him, like very basic stuff, 10 turnovers to 1 assist over the last 3 games, 0 blocks over the last 3 games, when through the first 8 games of the season, he had at least 1 block in 7 of them. So that's not even like anything high level here. It's just like kind of basic activity, and like he's had at least 3 turnovers in all 3 games on this road trip. So he's really been struggling. He's getting stripped. He's failing to even catch and collect the ball. Like I just think he's had a pretty rough performance here, coming off of what was probably his best game of the season against San Antonio. So that's been disappointing. But I want to get to Austin here, because I think that's been a big topic within the fan base. And anytime Austin has a bad game, particularly against a good opponent, an athletic opponent, it's going to bring up the playoff series against the Timberwolves. And so Austin had a horrible game last night. It was his worst game of the season. But I would also counter that he's had some pretty good games against Minnesota, who was the team they faced in the playoffs. He was cooking Jaden McDaniels in that game in Minnesota, against Portland with Tamani Kamara hounding him full court. Did have 8 turnovers in that game, but still dropped 41. And then against Miami with Davion Mitchell on him and a pretty, I believe a top 5 or top 3 defense at that time. He had a really good game against Miami. So does that performance scare you at all? Like, is that something? Is that nothing? Like, how do you view that?
I think it's a bit of both. And I'm glad you called out a couple of those big teams, athletic teams, Minnesota, Portland, Miami. LA's played 4 games against those 3 teams so far. And I'd agree with the characterization on your end that they're larger, they're athletic. When LA played those teams, I think not just like the size you have, but how you use it is really important. The primary pick and roll coverage from those teams has been drop, switching, and drop. And that is very different from the Thunder hedging and blitzing with these aggressive coverages, the most that the Lakers have seen in any game so far this year. So when you are super athletic, it is, to me, scariest to play against you when you're able to unlock all of that athleticism by flying around, putting two on the ball, rotating behind it, being very aggressive. And we saw a lot of plays in that game where, like, it was LA had an open guy and the pass couldn't quite get there on time or in the shooting pocket because of the length and because there were four hands in front of a player instead of two hands in front of a player. And when we take that and pull it back to Austin's level, he as a ball handler, Luka as a ball handler, when they are facing hedging and blitzing, their job is to be a facilitator. Like, the way you attack is get the ball, draw two, get the ball out. We're playing 4v3, and you've got to win those advantages. The piece where scheme really factors into this is when I'm facing a blitzing or a hedging defense, I can get a 4v3 no matter what because you're putting two on the ball. When I run good sets, instead of a 4v3, it's a 3v2 or it's a 2v1. And the fewer players that are in that equation, the less that size and athleticism and speed matters because you have more distance to cover to defend those two players. If I got one guy under the rim defensively and two guys in each corner, I don't care how fast you are, you're not going to be able to guard them both. But if you've got two defenders and I have three offensive players, one in the dunker spot, one in each corner, that's easier to rotate to and then recover to. If it's a 4v3, even more so. And that is where, unfortunately, the Lakers just weren't organized enough. We saw their offensive rating drop 29 points between being organized against the hedging and switching versus freelancing against OKC. On the full season so far, it's a 22-point difference. So how you attack aggressive defense matters. LA was not good enough. And for Austin, I see in the data that I track, his teammates were underperforming on the shots he did create for them. And I think he did, he split a few hedges. He was trying to get himself some looks. There was a little bit of under coverage mixed in where they would hedge, but they'd also go underneath the roll man to take away the immediate roll. And that seemed to confuse the team. This is the first LA seen that all season. They did not have any counters to it tactically. And I think that trickled down to him having a bit of a rougher game, Luka having a rough game. And then when you also look at the shooting piece that I talked about earlier, over the first 4 games Austin played this season, he scored 17 points in the half-court offense above what we would expect from an average player. Since those first 4 games, he's been minus 17, and he's missed a couple. So he basically, really good shooting, really bad shooting. So he's underperformed. Looking at his expected efficiency in this game based on the shots he did take and how open they were, he was getting decent looks. Not his best game, but okay looks. He just didn't hit them. And I think it was a mix of that and the scheme from the Lakers plus the defensive style from OKC, taking him as a scorer out of the equation, gave us the result that we saw. So I think to a degree, this is expected and okay. And you take Austin away, you're going to give up more of those 4v3s, 3v2s, 2v1s. The team just didn't do good enough. But also there's a process piece of it that has to be better. And also Austin himself, he didn't shoot well. His playmaking, his decision-making, not the sharpest, but I'm not thinking there's any big picture or long-term concern for me with him.
How much does LeBron and his impending return affect and impact this, right? Because one quote that I have referenced now multiple times this season is Chris Finch in the second game of the season was asked about guarding a Luka team versus a Luka and LeBron team. And he said it was a death knell to blitz and trap a Luka team with LeBron as one of the 4v3 players versus with LeBron off, they felt more comfortable doing that. And I think we clearly saw that last night against OKC. But if you have LeBron either as the potential screener and then the short roll playmaker, or you have LeBron coming from the corner or the dunker spot as a cutter or as a shooter, I think he can function in a variety of ways depending on how the Lakers want to configure things. So in looking at and we have to acknowledge so no LeBron, no Gabe Vincent, also no J-Dub, no Lou Dort, and no Aaron Wiggins. So both teams were down multiple rotation players, but just adding in LeBron with what you've seen from this offense so far, I guess you could take this 2 ways. One, with the OKC matchup, how would he fit in offensively with how the Lakers need to counter it moving forward? And then kind of bigger picture, how do you see him fitting in with the way the Lakers offense has functioned this season?
Yeah, to your point, having an extra really strong passer on the court matters a lot. And the fact that he'll be a screener on a lot of these plays, to me, is really important because that puts him in prime position to get the ball. He's not the, like, I think Jackson Hayes is a more springy, athletic, lob threat than LeBron is at this point in his career.
Sure.
Deandre Ayton is as well. But if I'm feeding one of them in the short roll, I would so much rather it be LeBron James. And what I think that's going to result in is teams not being willing to blitz and hedge. Instead, they're going to switch. And then LeBron is a switch beater in the post. And that's, a great place for him to be. He can also kind of bully his way through some smaller guards from the perimeter. And so I think he fits in whether the defense is switching or hedging. If they're in drops, certainly he can pick and pop, or he can try to find a little pocket. So he kind of fits in no matter what the defense is doing. To me, he's going to obviously be a big upgrade offensively from what we're working with. He can space the floor. He's strong on ball. He's strong off ball. He is going to be a really big, if I'm going to get very granular, he's a huge upgrade as a playmaker on the horns elbow sets the Lakers run. So think 2 shooters in the corners, 2 guys at the elbows, ball handler at the top of the key. This setup is called horns. It's an alignment. It's like a formation in football, I formation, shotgun, things like that. What the team runs out of it often, and this is actually their second most used series of plays of anything they've run this season, has been their horns elbow sets, where they feed one of the elbows, and then you might have a flare screen between the other elbow and the ball handler, or you might flip it back to the ball handler, or the 2 elbows might screen for each other, or like there's a bunch of different things that can happen. But this is the second most used thing they've gone to this year, and it has been their least effective series of sets so far among their top 8. So high usage, really low effectiveness, and he is the missing piece to it. It allows you to get him closer than the 3-point line at the elbow, where he can ISO, he can post up. His mind and his playmaking really fit in, and I see it being a perfect fit. So very granularly, that's like the one spot I'm like, oh man, we're missing LeBron here, when I see Jackson Hayes trying to like read like 3-man combinations of the defense. For as well as Jackson's done with it, like LeBron's at a different level, right? And so that's there. Zooming out, he fits in really well. Yes, of course, when he's out there, there's only one ball. There will be plays where he is trying to ISO and then Luka's just standing there. That's going to happen, right? But I think there will be a net positive. I think we will be seeing a little bit more of the old man LeBron offense, where it's a Luka-centric, it's Austin-centric, and he is more of that screener and an elite passer in a Draymond Green, like a very juiced Draymond Green kind of way.
Souped up Draymond.
Very much so. Yes, very much so. So, like, I think he fits in really well offensively. I'm not worried about that. Defensively,
Olympics,
different
right?
story.
Like he did that to a degree with the Olympic team.
Exactly. He's seen everything, right? Like this is like your Tom Brady of like, I don't care what you're throwing out there. I've seen it. I know how to beat it. He doesn't always beat everything, right? But like from a mental standpoint, it is really good to have him be the outlet guy that needs to make a split-second decision. If the defense especially is like mixing up their coverages, as opposed to one of these centers that is more of a like catch ball, dunk ball sort of player. Defensively, different story. It's going to be worse. I don't want to talk about it, but offensively, let's get this guy back.
So, I mean, you've touched on now several things related to the offense. So let's just get into what the people are here for, which is offensive organization. You've been leading this offensive organization movement. I feel like I get the question so much compared to a couple years ago, right? And I think that there is the pocket of Lakers fans that are very tapped in with the offensive organization and doing their own tracking or following your tracking. So let's get into the state of the Lakers offense right now. How would you grade the offense through the first 12 games? I believe right now they are, depending on where you look, somewhere around league average offensively. So even with LeBron out, I think that probably should be better, and it obviously had been better going into this road trip. But around league average offensively, again, depending on the site you want to stat, but or site you want to cite. What have you seen from the offense, and how would you rate it so far up to this point?
Yeah, how much time do you have? It's not good.
I got all the time in the world.
Okay, it's clear out the paint. It's not good. It's not good. The structure itself is happening much less frequently. And when I talk about that, when Jovan talks about that, we're talking about like team calling plays and saying, let's get into that horns alignment, and you're going to pass to here, and then this guy's going to screen for this guy. And there's often a read and react element to it. Like when the Lakers run stack ball screens or Spain pick and rolls, same thing. There is a read and react element to it. So sometimes it may end up looking a little bit different based on what the defense is in if the players read it correctly. But it is a way to decide, like, the defense is hedging. We're going to find a way to create a 2v1 instead of a 4v3 or a 3v2. And when the team is more organized, we see them get a better shot profile, more open shots, a better effective field goal percentage as a result. They draw free throws at a higher rate. They have a higher offensive rebounding rate. It allows you to be very focused in on who is doing what. And that is why this season, Luka Doncic is 25% more likely to be directly involved in the scoring possession as the scorer or passer when the team is organized compared to when they freelance. When they freelance is when you see Vando trying to go to work or Jake LaRavia trying to go to work. And like, you want everybody doing the job that they're good at doing. And when you are able to, design the play, you were thinking, you have that in mind, right? This year, when the team is organized, they've had a 121 offensive rating. They've had a 108 offensive rating when they freelance. So this is an easy way, flipping a switch on and off, to play like a top 3 offense or a bottom 3 offense on any given play. And then when we dig deeper, you could talk about how they're attacking coverages and things like that. But this, to me, is the most important of the metrics I track. It is something that we've talked to NBA coaching staffs about as BBall Index over the offseason. I've talked to college coaching staffs. They're tracking it now. This is now tracked publicly for the Knicks. I am actively talking to someone about tracking it for the Sixers. It is being tracked for Memphis. It is a movement that is growing and growing, and everyone that is tracking it is seeing what I'm seeing, where as you are more structured, you are more effective. It's like in football, if we're playing backup football, everybody go do what you want, we're going to have a worse time than if I'm able to design a play call to attack a cover 3 or attack a cover 4, whatever it is I'm seeing. The goal rate for this, if you're saying, what's good, what's bad, the goal number that I set 3 seasons ago was 55%. 55% of the time, let's be organized. I don't expect it to be 100%. Transition's not counted in here, by the way. If you go in transition, that's ignored. This is purely half-court offense. This season, when the team is at 55% or greater, they're undefeated 4-0. When they are not hitting that number, they're 4-4. Over the past 4 seasons, the Lakers have won 2/3 of their games when they hit this number and win just under 50% of their games when they don't hit this number. JJ last year was at 51%. I was not very happy about it. It dropped and dropped and dropped over time. Darvin Ham, his last year was at 51%. Same number. So where are we this year? 44%. This would be the worst I have logged for any team for more than 2 games, 44%. So not very good. If we're thinking metaphorically, I'd say hands are in pockets, and that needs to change. When the team is doing it, they're doing it well. They're being very effective. When it comes to attacking pick and roll defenses and dribble handoff defenses, this is another area that's very important. When the Lakers, for example, attack with stack ball screens against drop coverage, they have a 140 offensive rating because it takes what the defense is giving. The team has been much better this year. They're showing more signs of life attacking drop coverage. They were good last year and are good this year against hedging defenses, not so much against OKC, unfortunately. Switching is where LA currently has a weakness. If you switch, LA just kind of tries to go ISO ball. We saw Austin, he can ISO mismatches. Luka can too. There were 19 possessions where LA went 1v1 against the Thunder from the post or perimeter, and OKC switched on 0 of those plays, and that is how you end up with a 0.9 points per possession, 0.88 expected. But when you can pick your mismatches, you can do well. When you can build in good, easy looks before you try to go ISO ball, I think you can do even better, and we saw that last season. Big picture on the year, the Lakers have a 133 offensive rating with good coverage fit and an 89 offensive rating with poor coverage fit. When they have poor coverage fit, 9% of their shots are at the rim compared to 28% when it's good. 56% of their shots are from mid-range with poor coverage fit compared to 20% when it's good. I don't know, man. It is something that they're doing worse than they were last year. They're countering help from opponents on ISOs and post-ups worse than they were last year. They're countering only 36% of the time. When defenses send that help, because this rate is so low, the Lakers having 91 offensive rating. It's 87 when they don't counter, 124 when they do counter. And to me, those are some of the big picture things. zooming out, they're not getting into fast breaks quick enough. The transition offense is not there. Third fewest points per game there. Bad frequency, bad execution. And then the other kind of niche thing is I see this team tipping its pitches a bit. There are certain sets they like to run where it's the only play they run from that specific setup, and it makes them very easy to scout and prepare for. And we're starting to see teams pick up on that and deploy defenses that are very tailored to specific set plays in a way that you could only do if you scouted it in advance. You're not just going to magically run a very specific niche kind of defense, once out of every 8 plays. So we're seeing that impact things, and even stuff as simple as their away series. So the most frequent go-to offense we've seen from the team this year is 5-out offense. There will be a pin down screen at the top of the key, kind of away for a score. Maybe Austin, he's going to catch the ball and then maybe come back off the screen or something else. If you run those sets as LA, you've scored 100. You have a 117 offensive rating this year. When the defense top blocks that and makes that player have to reject that screen, LA has counters and other things built off of it, but it's not very robust right now. And when you make them reject that first screen, their offensive rating drops from 117 to 79. So if I were game planning against LA, I'm switching. I am making them run help beaters. I am top locking that away series. I am sitting on the one and only baseline out of bounds play they run all the time. I am knowing that when they run stack, they telegraph it. Yeah, man. It's the back cut and then that kind of out screen. Yeah. We saw Alex Caruso last game run the zipper cut on the sidelines out of bounds play for the Laker player. He ran the route for the receiver and the play didn't work. It's getting a little too stale. So it's early in the season. Take it for what it is, which is, incomplete. But so far we are in a worse place across the board in everything than we were a season ago. And it's very frustrating to me because the ceiling of this team is so much higher than it was a year ago. The floor of this team is so much higher than it was a year ago. In every metric that I am tracking, when the team has good process, they're an incredibly explosive offense. And they need to get healthy, stay healthy, execute, and run good scheme. And I think they'll be able to be a really, really good offense this year.
Are there any trends or tells that to you kind of indicate when the offense is going off the rails? It sounds like you were just mentioning switching more maybe will result in more ISOs, or whether they're top blocking on certain actions or whatnot. But are there is there kind of an aha moment in a game where you start to see, because it does, I'm not tracking this stuff as closely as you are. I just largely, taking my notes and then watching and rewatching the games and seeing your tweets and you talking about it. But it does feel like they tend to start games a little bit more organized, and then it progressively goes off the rails throughout the course of a game.
So they, I guess, incorrect. They're at 43% for the first quarter. Yeah. So 43%.
I specifically mean the first few minutes of a game.
Oh, okay.
They'll have
I agree with you there.
They always have the first action that they're going to, and then it might even be the first 4 or 5 actions that they're organized and they're running stuff, and then all of a sudden it just devolves from there.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with you there. For full first quarter, it's usually not very good, 43%, and then it jumps up to 54% second quarter, 50% third quarter, 45% fourth quarter. But yeah, usually they start games running a few sets in a row. In this OKC game, they didn't. They ran 2 or 3 plays the first dozen or so possessions, and that to me is not a good sign. If they start slow, they usually finish slow. If you see the defense being hyper aggressive and taking away entry passes, it clogs everything up. The team doesn't yet have a lot of counters built into I am supposed to pass to Jovan. If Jovan's not open, the play's broken. So if you see the guys at the elbows catching the ball at the 3-point line instead of actually at the elbows in horns, that's a problem. If you see that away action from 5 out, top locked, that's going to be a problem. If you see the defense switching screens, that's going to be a problem. And if you start to see the defense's shell, if you were to kind of draw a line to connect all the defenders and it makes this big, pentagon or whatever, how big that pentagon is, when it's wider, it can be an issue because you're being so aggressive. When it's very small and they're protecting the paint and keeping the Lakers from driving into the paint, that's also been an issue for the team. So basically any sort of aggressive sort of defense, whether it's aggressive in defending the rim or aggressive in taking away your passes, LA's really had a bad time with it. Where they're usually good is when you're kind of playing vanilla neutral defense or drop coverage or like soft hedging where I'm not actually blitzing. I'm just kind of putting a second guy close to the ball and giving you time for your like stack action to run. The LA does much better in those situations.
So let's say that the Lakers start to progress to the mean and get back closer to the 51%. Let's not say, let's not have wishful thinking here and say 55. Let's say it gets closer to 50, 51%. LeBron comes back, Gabe comes back. You have your top 9 to 10 guys that you project to have currently. What do you think is a realistic ceiling for this group with a more, again, kind of return to the norm with the organization, LeBron back? Like, we're talking top 5 offense, top 3 offense, or does it have to get back closer to 55% for them to reach that threshold? Like, what do you view right now as a realistic offensive ceiling for this group?
I think if the team's like reasonably healthy and they're at 51% and all the other things stay the same, I think we're probably looking at a top 5 offense. If they can get better at those help counters, which is very important, specifically when teams switch and then try to pack the paint, then I think you're talking top 3. If they can get to 55%, yeah, we're talking about the number 1 offense in the league, I think. If they aren't, I would bet that they're the number 1 half-court offense, and then it's just the lack of transition that is holding down the overall offensive rating from being number 1. But I don't see any reason for this team and the offensive firepower that they have with LeBron, with Luka, with Austin, with some of the role players that are able to do what they're able to do. This should be a top 3 half-court offense in the league with like fine offensive process and with good offensive process. Like we're talking about the number 1 offense. So that is where, like, I understand with a higher floor, there will be more wins. There will be a higher offensive rating, and it'll, I'm complaining about this stuff, and people were telling me, like, you're overreacting. The record's good, or the offensive rating's good. We've seen the offensive rating fall back down to earth because the results are kind of now matching the process. But I don't want good to be the enemy of great, and I really don't want the team to get complacent with mediocre process. And when really good process could make them that top offense, they have to be if they're going to go where they're going to go. This is not a group that's set up to be a defensive juggernaut. I think this is like a team that can be the number 1 offense and then like the 12th to 15th defense in like a top end scenario. And
that's a little optimistic right now.
I know, man. That's like, I'm thinking optimistically for both. Like, that is the general framework for this to be a team that can, make a run to the Western Conference Finals, is be like really, really, really good offensively and fine defensively, and then hope for, some really good tactics and scheme and stuff like that, and JJ playing chess in the playoffs to help you find another gear. I don't believe they will. I don't quite have the faith yet. I have not seen that sort of linear growth. But to their credit, I do have a scheme score metric that looks at all of these factors and tries to boil them down to one number. Over the past 9 games, it has gone up from D+ to C's into the B's, and now it's into the A's. And it's still not where I want it to be. I think I could probably, maybe I need to recalibrate this a little bit because I'm still kind of pissed off with what I'm seeing, but it is very clearly taking steps forward, both in the coverage fit piece of things, which I think is very important, and then also the rate at which they're organized has been going up a little bit. It was rough there for a little bit. Let me see here. Well, actually, from a coverage fit standpoint, they were averaging 47% over the first 9 games. They're now at 72% over the last 3 games. So there's a big difference there. For the organized offensive rate, it was 45% over the first 8 games. It's at 54% over the last 4 games. So they're taking some steps up. They've got to keep growing. And if they can, like, we should be having a lot of fun watching so many points scored from this team day in and day out.
The Death Star offense. That's what we are looking for. Mistra in the chat here says, I could see Lakers top 3 offense and 19th defense. I think that could be where things are headed right now, with how the defense is looking. That's what I want to close with before we get into the chat and a few questions we have from the audience here. Appreciate you all for tuning in. Shout out to the late night gang. So Lakers are currently, again, depending on where you want to look, bottom 10-ish defense right now. And we talked a little bit earlier about some of the switching versus being a little bit less switching or maybe hedging more. But then you're creating those 4-on-3 scenarios. How much of their bottom 10 defense right now, in your opinion, is due to scheme versus personnel? And do you think the only way to really solve this is to make a trade, or is there, you mentioned like 12th defensively maybe being the like ceiling? Is that good enough if like maybe they don't hit the offensive peak and it is more like 3 to 6 offensively? Can you still win with being the 12th best defense, or even being probably closer to league average, maybe in that like 15 to 18 range? Like how do you view the defense overall, and is the only way to really address this via trade?
It's not good. I'm not pleased with where it is right now. I do think most of it is personnel based, and I'm a big scheme guy. I'm looking at the scheme. I'm checking out the tactics. I think like they've made a lot of the same decisions I would be making in terms of being drop heavy, being switch heavy, not being a big hedge heavy team. You've got like a lot of these lineups, once LeBron's healthy, where Luka and LeBron are going to be your low man defensively, needing to rotate behind your ball screens. I don't want that. They're not very good at that. I don't want to expend their energy doing that. I want them to be able to stand still, chill, and play shell defense while I defend ball screen actions 2v2, because I have good screen navigators with Gabe Vincent and Marcus Smart. One of those guys has not been healthy at all yet. And then I feel like I can be good enough in drop coverage with Ayton and with Hayes, both guys that are a little bit more mobile with their drop, closer to the level of the screen and then looking to retreat rather than like playing goalie standing under the rim. In theory, I think you can be a good drop coverage defense. By playing drop, you're going to have a lower free throw rate given up. You're going to give up less at the rim. You are going to give up fewer offensive rebounds. And I think that can be good enough, but it's still very vulnerable in the playoffs, because then you can say, I don't care what coverage you want to be playing. Luka's man comes at a ball screen, and now you get to choose between switch and give me Luka as a mismatch, or give me that 4v3, 3v2, 2v1. And that is where I don't see the ceiling with this group defensively from a personnel standpoint. And it comes down to the roster construction, not just in general from a talent standpoint, but when we think about where their good players are good defensively, it's so many like off-ball defenders, not too many on-ball defenders. You've got Gabe Vincent, Marcus Smart are your point of attack guys, and then you've got like Bronny James and Nick Smith, who are not NBA like playoff rotation caliber guys. Rui's your one wing stopper, and this season he's playing 4 more than 3, and he's not doing very well with it. And then like Jared Vanderbilt, Jake LaRavia, they're both disruptive. They're also both helpers. They are not point of attack defenders. They are not wing stoppers. They can do okay in little spurts, but when they are good, when they're effective, when they're impactful, it is rotating behind the play. And it is just incongruent with what LeBron and Luka are good at. And so you've got guys that are like in a trickier spot from a scheme standpoint with where they're going to thrive. When LeBron comes back, he's a helper. Dalton Connect's a helper. Adu Thiro, he's a helper. He was a helper in college. He never played point of attack. He tried to play like small ball 5 and was decimated doing so against Auburn and a couple other teams. Like, he's a helper, and you've got like 18 helpers on this team and 2 or 3 on-ball defenders. And to me, that is just not the kind of roster construction that you can win with. And like, contrast it with OKC or those Boston teams you talked about, where maybe not Boston this year, but like switch 1 through 5 and you feel pretty good about where those matchups are. With LA, if you switch anything, you're immediately very alarmed and having to immediately engage in a bunch of extra help defense. And that's more rotations and more toll on these guys and more execution they have to be sharp with. And it's still very vulnerable to help beaters with cutting and screening. So to me, it is a very solvable defense, even when they're at their best. And I think the only way to fix that is by making some trades.
If we're looking at in assuming that the core 4 for the starting group and likely the closing group is going to be Ayton, LeBron, Austin, and Luka, if you were to pick a, let's say, realistic or semi-realistic fit guy who theoretically is this 3-and-D guy who can play obviously off the ball and shoot the ball at a certain level, ideally close to league average at a minimum, and maybe be like a transition threat, and then also a multi-positional guy who can ideally fluctuate between being a point of attack guy and a wing stopper. Who is that player or players that you feel like would make the most sense as that fifth guy?
I have no idea. This is not a good podcast answer, but I don't know, man.
How do you feel about Herb Jones?
I would be open to Herb Jones. Herb Jones's like defensive data was not nearly as good last year as it was before. I think he's got enough that you can make that one work. I would be willing to throw that dart.
How do you feel about Andrew Wiggins?
I feel pretty good about Wiggins. I think he is that kind of guy that can play point of attack or wing stopper. He can space the floor. He can be a ball mover. To me, he's somebody that very clearly fits. He is on the tail end of his career. He's got a few more years left. So I can understand like buying a depreciating asset not being the most appealing. But if you reach a point in the season close to the deadline where you do think you're that one piece away, to me, he is someone that does very clearly fit the need, the scheme, the defensive roles, and fit what you're doing offensively.
And then last one before we get into the chat here. How do you feel about Dylan Brooks?
I don't like Dylan Brooks, but I do think defensively he should be able to do what you need him to do.
I don't more of a wing stopper than a point of attack guy.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I don't have a great feel for how his rotational defense is. I would have to watch some film there, but I know he's a pain in the butt to deal with when he's in actions and when he's on ball.
All right, let's get into the chat here. We're going to answer a few questions. First, we got a couple of super chats. First one from Joshua Johnson. AR is a good player, and yesterday was not his fault. However, his skill set is redundant, and we need an athletic defender much more, and he has trade value. He's a Luka light, and we already have Luka. So Joshua is arguing to trade Austin for an athletic defender. I know this has been a popular theory among the fan base or certain segments of the fan base. What say you in terms of like let's just say the Lakers can find a certain caliber of athletic defender that's on a similar of similar value to Austin. How would that, obviously they take a step up defensively, but how would that impact the offense? Because I think that's the part that people are underestimating or underrating, like how important Austin is to the current version of the offense. And if you just replace him with a wing who can't really dribble, how much of a step back the Lakers take offensively?
It's going to all depend on the skill sets for me. If like this was a dumb conversation to have a year, 2 years, 3 years ago, just because Austin has so much overperformed what he's paid. Like he's a crazy value on his contract, and it's just unrealistic to find an equally valuable trade target. However, starting next year, he's not going to be anymore. He's going to be like an appropriately paid, like really good player. And once that value goes away, it almost in a way becomes easier to like, for me at least, to accept maybe moving him, because like when I think about making the most of your players, you want to have your top two guys be guys that can run actions together. And I don't really see that with Austin and Luka. I see it more so with like Austin can run off of a pin down or an exit screen or a staggered screen or something while Luka does his thing, or vice versa, rather than like one guy can screen for the other. This is the issue that like the Kings had with De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton, or the Kings. No, hang on. Was it Indiana? Who am I talking about? And then Indiana had with Turner and Sabonis. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. Like you can have two bigs or two guards or two wings. It's not going to be as good as one guard and one big, or one wing and one big, or one guard and one wing. If you can trade Austin for an equally talented and impactful big man, you should see more synergy. If you were going to trade Austin for another guard that is just a better defensive player and they're kind of equally valuable, it's going to be because they take a big step back offensively. And I can understand that being a big concern, because right now those two guys are very heavily leaned upon, and like a downgrade that playmaking, it's really going to hurt what you're doing. Austin, we have such a luxury with these two guys being able to like draw two and like shoot pull-up threes and just create so much more hedging. For so many years as Lakers fans, we've had these like lead guards that you can go under screens against, and it's been very annoying for me as a scheme guy because a big chunk of the playbook you just can't run. It unlocks a lot to have those skill sets, and even if you need to attack in waves more than together, I don't know. I feel like I'm just positioned to go with the guy who's been on my podcast and has been, homegrown and part of this team for more. But if we strip away the emotion of it, it's more realistic that Austin's traded in the next 12 months than it was any of like the last 24 months.
But to that point, like I think I've been saying this since January. I think it makes far more sense to re-sign him and retain the asset and then flip him when he's on a bigger contract, right? Because right now you're trading Austin where the new incumbent team or the receiving team would have no assurance that Austin is going to stay. So that's going to drive Austin's value down. That's going to drive the price down, and you're not going to get that Desmond Bane type package potentially for Austin. Whereas if he resigns, and now we're talking about December 2026 or January, February 2027, that's where I think you can package Austin plus something else, plus maybe a couple picks or whatever for a level up or two in terms of another star or just a better fitting number 2 or number 3 player, whatever. So the shrewd, like, some people want him to be traded now. I get it, but the Lakers would be selling, like, Austin's value will be higher 12 months from now compared to where it's at right now, just in terms of like the contract situation, because so
like, is he a part of the Lakers' future? Probably, but maybe. Is he a part of this year? Yes, and he has to be, and this is not the year to trade him. It's got to be once he's on that bigger contract, then it makes sense to move him.
Next one from Fang Charlie. Thank you for the super chat. Sup, Brate? I want to say the thing I'm concerned about with the trade is will there be teams who are rebuilding and have good players to trade? For example, Herb, Wiggins, they are all on non-rebuilding teams. I'd push back a little bit and say the Pelicans are inadvertently rebuilding. The issue for them is that they traded their 2026 first to Atlanta for God knows what reason. Miami, obviously, right now they're tied for 5th in the East with Atlanta, and Wiggins is having a really good season. I think he's having a better season than last year. So I could see Miami potentially coming down to how things go between now and the trade deadline, and how available Wiggins is, and what that price potentially is. With Herb, I think that one's a bit more realistic in terms of him being available. Now, I think the price for Herb is going to be higher than the price for Wiggins. So that's its own conversation in terms of I think the starting point is probably Rui in a first. I personally would do that. I don't know if the Lakers would do that. They are high on Rui, and they, the thing I've been saying recently is like they've traded 2 first-round picks over the past 4-ish years, and one was to get out of the Russell Westbrook business and get off that contract, and one was to get Luka Doncic. So both of those were like no-brainer, very obvious. We need to trade the first scenarios. Outside of that, they have been more cautious with trading picks in general, but especially first round picks. So I wonder where their threshold is with that. But how do you view like just the concept or the potential of Herb and Wiggins being available in general, let alone like the Lakers potentially trading for them?
It's too early to say. We'll have to see where their teams end up. We'll have to see, like, even if a team is rebuilding, you can make a couple swings with trades or in free agency and try to get better quickly. How quick do these front offices hope and expect to rebuild? And that I think that can shape if those players are part of that timeline. Herb Jones, a younger guy than Wiggins, so maybe they're more willing to keep him around. I don't know what the contract situation looks like for either, but lots of factors to look at. And for me, my approach is I'm not looking at this stuff this early. I am looking at the 9 different ways the team has run double drag so far. I'm not the person to talk to for this. So I'll say yes, whatever Jovan says.
Torturing yourself with organization. Next one from Kevin. Thank you for the super chat. Do what the Mavericks did in 2024, trade an LA 2030 pick swap to OKC for their own first or Houston's first this year. OKC doesn't need a very late first, and LA gets another first to trade. I mean, if you could swing that would certainly be something I would be interested in. Looking at OKC's picks, I mean, the list just keeps, like, I'm scrolling here for a while, but looking at next year, they have Utah's first, top 8 protected, Philly's first, top 4 protected, and then their own. So they have potentially 3 first-round picks next season for a team that might win 70 games next year. I don't know if OKC does this, especially like I think you always have to think about the competitive part of this of if I'm OKC, the Lakers are probably one of the teams that I'm looking at as a rival here over the next few years. And I don't know if I want to help the Lakers improve, but if OKC is just like, we can't have 3 first round picks potentially, added to this roster, maybe they do look to trade one of those picks out for, a different pick in the future. But I think they would probably try to swap the 2026 pick for like a future pick rather than a future swap, because there's no guarantee. Like, yes, OKC probably projects to be better than the Lakers in 2029, 30. Like they're just set up for the foreseeable future, but there's no guarantee that even materializes. So we could look back on this in like 3-4 years and it's like OKC basically just gave up a first for nothing and the pick didn't swap. So I think if they try to trade a current pick, it's probably for a future pick rather than a future swap, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would think so. I also wonder, like 5 years from now, does each NBA franchise have their own G League team, and are they able to stash more first round picks? And if so, can OKC take all of these million picks they have and build like a 2012 Alabama football roster where like they've got third stringers that are just wasting away, but they have them and you don't. And so maybe that's the future they're aiming.
Tough decisions here with Dort and Isaiah Hartenstein and Kason Wallace. Like you could see a scenario in a couple of years where they have to move on from some of these guys and like they have the scouting and the draft picks to replace them.
Yeah, I think, if I were in a front office, like I'll give you one cookie now for 2 of your cookies later and just keep operating that way. And eventually you're going to reach a point where your roster's really good and then you cash in some of those chips for the finishing touches and they're already like crazy good. If I were them, I would keep that flexibility. I would look to keep amassing picks and like kind of bet on not knowing what the future looks like and just trying to have as many dart throws as you can. And for that reason, to your point, I'd rather get extra picks and not really worry about the swaps piece as much.
Next one from Zakwan. Thank you for the super chat. DJJ for Maxi plus a first swap, or Herb for Maxi plus a first. Quickly, I would just say that I've been on record, like I'm skeptical of the Lakers and Clippers striking some sort of deal. I think along similar lines of what I just said with OKC, like the Clippers do not want to help the Lakers. And again, with the first swap, I think you could argue that the Lakers have the brighter future compared to the Clippers. So, if anything, the Lakers swap is probably not appealing to the Clippers, where looking at where like the Clippers could be a lottery team. I mean, they might be a lottery team right now, but they could certainly be a lottery team looking at like 2028, 2029, 2030. So if the Lakers are swapping one of those picks with them, it's probably not going to end up, translating and going through. So I think if you want to do that, it would probably have to be Maxi and a first, which I think is an overpay for DJJ. I don't know. I guess you're only giving up Maxi, so that's maybe close. But and then Herb for Maxi and a first. That one could work with the money, but it's just, does New Orleans want to do that? You could also do Gabe, I guess, technically instead of Maxi. But what do you think of like the concept that, like, how would DJJ, we saw the fit obviously with Luka and Dallas, but like how would that potentially work as that fifth guy?
As a starter? Has he been a starting?
I guess it's between
player?
Him and Marcus. Oh. He started in Dallas, if I'm not mistaken.
Did he? Okay. I should know better than that. I was there. I had tickets. He's a lot of fun. He's very athletic. I wonder what the shooting data looks like for him. I remember him being one of those like
Luka,
doesn't
Kyrie,
shoot very well.
PJ Washington, DJJ, and Gafford.
Okay. Yeah, that might have been a year I stayed home. As always, I endorse everything Jovan has ever said and will say. So I'll agree with you on this one, man. I'm trying to see
Jackson's short roll playmaking again.
Yeah, I think he's good at it. I think you've convinced me. Here, hang on a second. Derek, how did you spell Derek? D-E, is it
R-R-I-C-K?
All right. So Derek Jones Jr. He has been, all right, so point of attack defender last year, wing stopper the year before, good defensive impact guy. All right, I see that fitting. Offensively, he's oscillated between stationary shooter and stretch big. That's not very good. But stick him out there, hit wide open shots the best you can, and play good on ball defense. I think that's the right general formula. So if you can get that for cheap, I think that could be worthwhile. That's my high level analysis.
Next one from Danica. This is a question specifically for Tim. Does analysis take away from your joy watching?
To a degree, it does. I don't think I get as excited when I see good stuff, or when the team makes crazy plays. I think once you've been doing this for long enough, it does wear away at you a little bit. But at the end of the day, like, I am a Laker fan. I want the team to win. My mood is very tied to the team's success, and so they have that kind of sway in my mindset. And I think when I'm able to watch games live and like put my laptop away, I can get back into it. It is when I am watching the game live and then pausing and rewinding so I can start logging the game instead of having to rewatch it a second time that I start to strip the joy away from myself in the name of efficiency and being able to watch the game kind of once or 1.5 times instead of 2 full times.
Next one from Logan. Thank you for the super chat. This might sound crazy, but I would go after Kyrie or Ja. Luka has worked well with smaller twos like Jalen Brunson or Kyrie, then surround them with defense. What do you think of a potential Kyrie reunion or bringing in Ja?
Austin Reaves is just fine. I'm good there. I don't see either of those two guys being a big defensive upgrade, and the acquisition cost for either.
I think both
along
guys
with
are a
the
defensive
ages,
downgrade, actually.
Yeah, like I'm cool with the duo we've got right now. I would
just
do that.
Looking at, so Kyrie, you have this, obviously him coming off the injury now, and he's 33 years old. He is going to be 34 in March. So you have to factor in like where he's at in terms of his timeline, and he might only have a window of a couple of years here left, still being a high impact player, whereas Austin is a bit, less than a year older than Luka. It's actually crazy that Austin is older than Luka, but they're much more on the same timeline. With Ja, it's a little bit different, obviously, but I would say there's been plenty of stuff in the last few years that are red flags with Ja, on and off the court. I've not liked his disposition, especially during this whole situation in Memphis, and just some of his comments and the way that now he's calling everything a bait question. And like, he's just very confrontational, and in my opinion, hasn't really taken any accountability for his actions. But looking at the last 3 years, including this season, 2023-24, shot 26% on catch and shoot threes. That is terrible. Last year shot 34%, which is more respectable, but still kind of around average, a little bit below average. And then this year shooting 22% on catch and shoot threes. So he's obviously been in and out of the lineup, and that's going to skew some of that stuff. But I just don't think he is a off-ball player. And Luka's going to have the ball. So if you are going to play next to Luka, you need to be able to function off the ball. And I think you need to have a certain baseline, a certain floor as a shooter that I don't think Ja has.
Yeah, it's interesting to me seeing their wins above replacement last season. Austin's at 6.2 wins, and his year after year wins has just kind of gone up in basically a straight line. He's just getting better and better and finding new years. So 6.2 for him, 7.0 total when you combine Ja and Kyrie together between how well they played and how available they were. So that speaks to the caliber of play, along with how available, how consistent Austin Reaves has been. I think he is so much more so the kind of guy that I would want to invest in compared to some of the question marks you have with the other two when you factor in like what they're saying, character concerns, age, availability with injuries. Like Austin is, to me, the guy I would want to keep around.
Next one from Kevin. He follows up saying, thank you for the super chat. OKC traded a pick for a Maverick swap in 2024. I think the difference here, again, at the time, you didn't know that, where things were going to be with Luka because he was still a Maverick at the time. So that is the counterpoint here. But I just think the Lakers pick swaps have a certain value. Now, maybe with OKC, that being set up the way they are, they're confident that they would take a future Lakers pick swap. But fair counterpoint. I'm skeptical it happens, but it is an interesting strategy, and I think it's worth noting. Next one from Keon Park. I just watched Lakers Collective and the Three Musketeers said better to have AR than 3-and-D. I just think Braun, Luka, and a legit playoff ready 3-and-D shooting guard small forward will be better than Braun, Luka, and AR. Also better to sell Braun to stay. So this is again the Austin 3-and-D conversation. Ideally I'd like Austin and a 3-and-D wing. I think that, like, as we've discussed with that potential fifth player, I think that's probably the best way to do it. But because honestly, like right now, outside of Austin and Luka, how many guys do you feel comfortable with like making decisions on the fly? I think it's like maybe Marcus and like sometimes Jake, but I don't know if they have a very concentrated like ball handling, playmaking with those two, and then adding in LeBron, those three, that like makes it special. And then when you have like Marcus as your fourth best playmaker in the lineup, that's when you're cooking with something offensively. But if you remake this roster and all of a sudden you're empowering Marcus and Jake and Gabe Vincent a little bit more offensively, I'm a little skeptical of like, I think you just change your offensive ceiling where now you're maybe closer to like 10th in offense rather than top 5.
Yeah, I agree. The team has some good playmakers like for their role. Like we've got some good ball movers, but in terms of actual initiators, I can ISO and make the reads off of it. I can run a ball screen and make the reads off of it and have the ball handling to execute. It's really just those three players, Austin, Luka, LeBron, with Jake, with Dalton, with some of these others, they might give them handoff looks to try to take away the ball handling piece of it and simplify the decision making. Marcus has been a bit of an adventure so far, some good, some bad. I do agree with you that you take the ceiling away if you were to replace that player. Now, I think getting into roster construction, like post LeBron retiring, if you can repurpose that money somehow, like then I think you can get into some interesting things. If you have Luka, Austin, 2 3-and-D guys, and then a strong center, I think that's where kind of the future of these things looks. But this year with LeBron, both him and Luka play the same defensive role, and that makes things a bit tricky.
Next one from Mo Love. This is for Tim. What innovative offensive scheme from JJ for AR, Braun, and Luka together? So
knowing JJ, he draws up a lot of JJ Redick kinds of plays, right? This is, if you're thinking of like, close your eyes, what does JJ Redick do? That is what he's good at drawing up. When he had his podcast. Oh yeah, well we haven't seen any floppy this year yet.
Yeah.
But like if you think of like the Finland actions, some of the things he was drawing up on his podcast with LeBron, if you look at it, I wrote down every concept that they introduced. All of the ball screen stuff was fairly basic. All the post-up stuff, basic. All the ISO stuff, basic. The defensive stuff was basic. The off-ball screen stuff that he was drawing up was like top-tier graduate level things. And that has translated to how he's put together the playbook. So if he is drawing something up for those three, it's probably some sort of like double drag where you pass the ball ahead to LeBron and then he tries to hit Austin on an inside seal against a switching defense on short action. And then if that's not there, LeBron flips the ball back to Luka. You run a ball screen with a stack action because now Austin's under the rim as the shooter. And he either runs out to this corner for an exit screen, or he runs to set a back screen for LeBron or a down screen from LeBron, or maybe they just run, roll and replace against a hedging defense. That kind of like ball screen with a lot of off-ball screen flavor is what I would expect, like JJ Redick going like full JJ Redick mode with his play calling would end up looking like.
I have to go in a few, and I assume Tim does as well. So we're going to take a couple more here, and then we're going to wrap. Rich, thank you for the super chat. I think same team, all healthy, games under their belt, we win. We would have won both last year if Luka wasn't kicked out, and this team is better than last year. So some optimism here from Rich, and I don't know that I agree that they would have won, but I think it would have been I'm on record saying I think OKC is just better than last year. And now, I mean, if you're just adding in like LeBron and Gabe and not adding in J-Dub, Dort, and Wiggins, maybe they win. But if we're gonna say the Lakers are at full strength, I think it's only right to say OKC's at full strength. And I still think OKC at full strength is better, and also is better than the version of them we saw in March when the Lakers beat them?
Yeah, I think the top is too tough. I think the process isn't there, and we haven't really seen the proof of concept and sustained focus and execution of high level tactics for the team to reach that level. Also, I grew up a Mets fan, man. We're gonna like my Mets mindset is seeping into my other sports. We've got too many Dodger fans here that, everything's gonna work out. You're gonna find a way to win. We're gonna spend all the money, and I just can't. I can't make those same leaps of faith with the optimism. Like I'm ready for everything to fall apart, and that is just the way I'm wired. And don't be a Mets fan.
Look, you got to enjoy rooting for a team that's led by Mark Walter, right? Like you got to. It's going to be a new experience for you. Kristen Lee, thank you for becoming a YouTube member. I appreciate it. And then final one here from Keon Park following up. He says, wouldn't it be better to have a top 10 offense and a top 10 to 15 defense than a top 5 offense and top 15 to 25 defense? I'm of the belief it's better to be like elite on one side of the floor within reason, right? Like you don't want to be first in offense, 30th in defense, or even 25th is too low. But I think this is a follow up to the idea of flipping Austin for a 3-and-D wing and like taking a step back offensively, but taking a step forward defensively. How do you view kind of like the general where you want to be on both sides of the floor?
I am very much ruthlessly. I don't care about style. It does not matter to me. I don't need to win a specific way because I think if you box yourself into that, you are going to make suboptimal decisions and root for suboptimal things. The way I would look at this is the net rating is what matters. And if I am thinking about what the distribution usually looks like,
best start.
No, yeah, not off to the best start. But if you look at like what the normal distribution looks like for like offensive rating, defensive rating, you tend to see those very top tier teams break away from the pack. And so the difference between like the top 5 offense and top 10 offense should be bigger than the difference between a top 15 and 20 or top 10 and 15 defense, right? Because you're either clustered in that big kind of mediocre pack, or you're very bad or you're very good. I would lean to be very good in one of the two sides of the court. I don't care which one. For this team, it's going to be offense with how they're constructed, because you're more likely to have like magnitudes of impact higher more than just being a little bit better in the middle of the pack.
Well, Tim, this was fun as always. I appreciate you hopping on here, and I think this is our longest one yet. So appreciate the time. Other than checking out the Lakers Exceptionalism pod, following you on X, and checking out BBall Index. Anything you want to plug, and I will link all that below. Anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
I think that's it. If you do like this kind of content, got a podcast, Lakers Exceptionalism. A lot of things are behind the kind of the paywall this year. I'm putting out bonus pods, and if you like this kind of scheme tracking stuff, you can join our premium tiers in our Discord, chat about these things all day long, or you can go check out the tracker itself if you want to go see what did the team run with 8 minutes left in the third quarter, or what was our coverage fit, or what was our organized offensive rate, stuff like that. I'll tweet it out occasionally, but you can see all sorts of crazy, tabs and tabs and tabs of information that allow you to better analyze players, lineups, the team, the scheme, shot making, all of that. If you join those premium tiers, that's updated. I keep it updated. I am updating it like the day of games or maybe the day after games. So check that out. Look at my pinned tweet on Twitter, and you can see everything there. It's Tim_NBA is the Twitter account.
Awesome. Again, we'll link it all below. Check out Lakers Exceptionalism pod. Check out BBall Index. Tim is one of the smartest people covering the Lakers, and I always learn from listening to him, talking to him, and seeing his tweets. No one's breaking down offensive organization like Tim. Appreciate you all for tuning in. Appreciate you watching. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn on channel notifications, check out our Discord, check out YouTube memberships. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow night for Lakers Pelicans. I will talk to you then. Shout out to the Late Night Gang.